Hi there, this is Beth Green, otherwise known as Granny Rocks.
And this is Sweet Baby James, otherwise known as James Maynard.
Tonight I'm going to talk about, do you feel that the world is falling apart? In a way it is, and I have a lot of comments about it. It's not my usual kind of show, but there is no usual kind of Granny Rocks. But hopefully at least we'll be able to see comments today because we went back to an old way of doing the show. So before we get to it, let me introduce James, who's going to introduce the show.
You are watching Granny Rocks Our World, otherwise known as GROW. On this show, you get to experience Granny's uncommon sense, her wit, and her wisdom. Every Monday and Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. Pacific. So without further ado, take it away, Granny.
Okay, well, I don't know how you're feeling, but I can tell you how I'm feeling. And so I don't have any big answers today, but I do really want to bring up some topics that I want to discuss with you guys. And it's about, do you feel that the world is falling apart? Why? And is it? And I would say it is. So first I want to address what makes it feel like the world is falling apart. And it's that life is not following expected patterns. And that's what really creates instability. I mean, it's like if you have parents and, they're every night at 6 o'clock, dinner was on the table and your mother made it. And one day you come home and your mother is, announces that she's transgender and she's leaving you guys for some whatever, that's when your life begins to fall apart. Now, even if your mother was a lousy cook to start with, right, at least you knew that there was some stability in your life. Or you would go to school and, you had classes and they were boring, or the teachers were jerks or whatever it is, or there were bullies in the schoolyard. But now you may be afraid that someone's going to come in and shoot you. You know what I mean? That is the world falling apart. It is not following the expected patterns, although after a while you begin to expect the unexpected, right? So first I want to talk about what's going on right here at home. I'm sure you guys, Jamie said hello, and Ali said, hello, good morning. Well, hello, Jamie, and hello, Ali. So glad to see both of you. So let's take a look at right here at home. So wait a minute, it says we have that we have a comment from Island, but it's not showing up. Oh God. Anyway, we have the comments. I'm sorry, Island, your comment is not showing up. I'm not ignoring you. So let's take a look at some of the ways in which our world seems to be falling apart. Things are not following the expected patterns. A man with questionable sexual morality was given a pass by evangelical Christians. Elizabeth says hello. Hello, Elizabeth. So isn't that kind of weird? I mean, don't you think that's kind of weird? Is the Hollywood access tapes and all of that stuff, and he's talking about groping women, and yet he's being supported by evangelical Christians. So that does seem a little bit out of the ordinary, right? Okay, a man with questionable ethics is not being rebuked by his party, despite clear evidence of corruption, for example, of his charity. They've just been fined, I think, $1 million for being crooks. And there's definite clear evidence of self-dealing with a foreign nation, whether you call it an impeachable offense or not, abuse of power and so on. So all of that is there, and yet he's not being rebuked. Now, isn't that something that you find a little odd? That isn't what you would expect, right? A man with questionable information and knowledge about foreign affairs is overriding his own State Department, which is made up of all these people who spent all these years educating themselves and fighting for their own positions and rising in the bureaucracy and all of that. But he's making his own following policy. He's not even involving them. So it's not just in the Ukraine, but also in northern Syria. And by the way, we've decided we have to go back in, and we've aligned ourselves with the Kurds again, and we're fighting ISIS in northern Syria. Oh boy, that was one of those fiascos of somebody who doesn't know what he's doing. But I'm not saying that what we were doing was right to start with. I'm just talking about how this presidency really brings forward why we feel like the world is falling apart. Some of you like it and you're cheering it on and saying, oh good, let's have it fall apart. We hate those bureaucrats. Okay. A man with no military experience has now overridden the Pentagon and the Department of Navy regarding the disciplining of a Navy SEAL. That is like unheard of. You know, I mean, that's just unheard of. And now the Secretary of the Navy was fired for doing, you know, there's a million different stories about why, which I can't figure out yet, but it'll come up. Now, a man with no scientific awareness is denying climate change, even though everybody can see it, and he even overrides the National Weather Bureau. So now there's more. But the point is that these are institutions that we expect to behave in a certain way, and they are not. Now,
may I add another thing here?
Sure, there's lots of
another
other
thing
examples.
that's falling apart. Lincoln once said, well, during the Civil War in the United States, no house divided itself can stand.
Yeah.
There's never been more divisiveness and antagonism and opposition and polarization than there is now in this country. And it's a very confusing melee of alienation and hostility.
Absolutely. Well, I don't know if there's never been. During the Vietnam War, there was a lot of division in the country. And, you know, we have short memories, but it certainly is pretty bad right now. Okay, but now I'm talking about institutions that are not behaving the way you expect them to. And, you know, he's been attacking the press and so on. Okay, now there is no question that there is some pushback by these institutions, but not so much as you would think, right? So our institutions are not standing up to these actions. In fact, the Department of Education itself has thrown public education under the bus. And the Environmental Protection Agency has given up on protecting the environment. So you see what I'm saying? Isn't that interesting? I just want you to take a moment and look at this and see how does that feel. It's like all these things, you know, we're going backwards in terms of protecting our water, protecting our lands, and so on. Meanwhile, we are experiencing catastrophic storms, record high temperatures, melting ice caps, worsening health outcomes for many people, from medical procedures. Everybody is stressed, outrageous drug prices. We're just going through this. Rampant addiction, and a population that is terribly stressed about money, and it seems like it's stressed about everything else. So nothing is as we expect it to be, which is like, don't things get better? And isn't the government supposed to protect us? And can we really not trust the FBI, and so on? And people, you know, when you ask, well, how could this happen? It's because people weren't and aren't satisfied with the status quo either, or this would never have happened. See, there is no groundswell of support for the State Department. Do you see people going out there saying, oh, the State Department, how could they have done these terrible things? It's like, what? Who? Right? Or the press, or the FBI, or the EPA, etc. There's no groundswell of support. Isn't that interesting? So I understand what you're saying about the divisiveness, James, but this is just a different angle on the issue of what's going on in our world, although that is an example of how it feels like, you know, things are falling apart. And many of us are honestly confused about what to do because we don't know what to do anyway. So into this, and I'd love to hear some of your comments if you can ever make any. Along comes Michael Bloomberg. Is everybody following this? So Michael Bloomberg, for those of you who don't know, is one of the 10 richest men in the world. He makes Donald Trump look like a pauper. He's got over $50 billion, right? And he's not afraid to spend it. And Michael Bloomberg was the 3-time mayor of New York City. So he's got some political savvy and so on. And the question is, does he have the power to override the power that is overriding everybody else's power? And what are we going to do? You know, are we going to say, oh my God, somebody who's maybe is strong enough to, you know, to overcome Donald? Or are we saying, but do we really agree with this guy? Well, he's got some things going for him, which Donald Trump doesn't, which would mean that he could be supported by people who don't, you know, who want to dump Trump, right? He actually believes that there's climate change, and has made climate change a priority. He's willing to apologize. He is very strong on gun control. He's strong on, you know, he has been strong on sugar, gotten into a lot of trouble about it. You know, he's done some pretty stupid things, and sometimes he seems to be willing to say something about it. So here we are, we're faced with a fragmented Democratic field, right, with a variety of ideas. Now, this field, everybody is fighting out there for themselves, but I'm not sure that there's anybody out there who really represents what I believe in. You know, I believe in universal health care, but I'm not sure that Medicare for all without a private option for people who want it is really the best way to go. And while there is, you know, Elizabeth Warren is talking about taxing wealth and so on, and I totally believe we need to take on income inequality. I'm not sure what the best thing is. And Andrew Yang says we should all get $1,000 a month. And it just seems like nobody has grabbed on the public. Now, is Michael Bloomberg? I don't know if Michael Bloomberg is going to grab the public. But, and in fact, I don't even know what he believes in a lot of things, and never paid any attention to him. Like, oh, come on, you've got to be kidding. Yet another billionaire who's going to fix the world, but without changing it. You know what I mean? Without really going into anything. So looking at all of this, you know, is there some feeling, and I'm asking you, is there some feeling like we desperately need somebody, a strong man or a strong woman, who's going to come in and strong arm the other guy? And I'm curious as to what you guys think. And nobody has said anything on the topic yet. So I am going to have to sit here and wait for somebody to say something. But we can start with sweet baby James. What do you think about what I'm saying, James, that it feels like the world is falling apart? And are we panicking? And are we going to be looking to somebody who might be, you know, strong enough to take on you know who? Or are you feeling like, oh no, wait a minute, I don't believe in that, I believe in this? Or do you really feel that much behind anybody else?
Well, I'm very much in favor of the Green New Deal.
Which he's against.
So I'm in favor of policies that help the most people. And we went for, the public went for a strong man in Trump in 2016. He said, trust me, I know what to do. I'm going to solve all the problems, you know, and he's created more problems. So the strongman thing isn't really a democratic thing. And so I really kind of feel like there's an there needs to be an emerging sense that we're all in this together, and we need to come together and meet the needs of everyone. And if that means taxing the wealth so that there's a redistribution of wealth so that everyone has a fair chance in life, so be it.
Well, Bloomberg does believe that they should raise taxes on the rich.
Yeah.
And he has made climate change his #1 priority.
Which I think it needs to be #1 priority.
Oh, I agree.
The survival of the humanity is at stake.
Well, I think part of my problem is that I'm so desperate to have somebody to come in who's going to deal with climate change that I'm willing to hold my nose. And I can't believe that I said that. I have never said that in all my 74 years, that I'm willing to say, well, I'm willing to overlook this and that if somebody can get our nation head out of its you-know-what about climate change, because we are in the last minute. Elizabeth said, I'm feeling scared of it all and tend to not pay attention to what's happening in politics. I'm even having a hard time listening to this show right now. Really? And that's from one of our friends. Well, thank you so much for sharing that, Elizabeth. Somebody just put up a like for that. I'm sure that was a like for that comment.
Well, I'd like to remind everybody that Beth has written a book, Living with Reality. We can't be ostriches and stick our heads in the sand and expect not to have our butts kicked. So we've got to be mindful of what's happening and not go into fear, but go into proactive action,
Yes.
coalescing with others of like mind.
Yes.
To bring about change.
Well, here's what I'm thinking, since we're not getting any other, can we get some more comments here? Or maybe everybody else has left. Okay. Everyone has left the building. What I would like to do is be at peace.
Yeah.
And observe. The world that is falling apart is not a world that I want to reconstruct.
Oh, that's an interesting point.
There was income inequality, racism, sexism, anti-Muslim, anti-Semitism. There is imbalances of power. There is a completely useless, healthcare system. I mean, James and I have Medicare, and we pay for it, and we pay for supplemental insurance, and then we have to pay for a drug plan, and it doesn't cover hardly anything that we ever use. But we have to have it just in case such and such happens, right? It's also dysfunctional that I think it's good to start out by saying, the system we have is dysfunctional, has been dysfunctional, and that's why people are freaking out, Elizabeth, because we don't seem to have any solutions. And who do we support in the next election or in the primaries? I mean, some of you have already made up your minds, or you're out there activated, and I'm certainly not going to say anything against it. But I would like to see what these people are going to come up with, and who's going to be willing to talk about the level of consciousness that has created these strong men, this polarization, this apathy, this fear, this hatred, this divisiveness. No one man can create hatred in a nation. He can only ride the wave. And every institution that we have needs to look at why the nation is not jumping up and rebelling against the erosion of power of all these institutions. I wonder why, right? Jamie says, we are not standing for the same values we once did. I think we forgot who we really are. I can really understand you're saying that, Jamie, but frankly, I think we were always lying about the values we were standing up for. The Vietnam War was such a fiasco of not standing up for any real values and pretending that we were, and before that, there was, and then there was the invasion of Iraq and so many other ways in which we have used the world as our playground, trying to extract as much money as we could. And, and even before that, there was the House Un-American Activities Committee. and where was the freedom of speech when the Senate and the House came down and blacklisted people for having opinions that were not in harmony with those of the powers that be? Let's not forget that one of the reasons that we have this mess we're in today is that people have felt forgotten, people haven't trusted institutions, and with good reason. Unfortunately, we're not doing things that make us more trustworthy. But it's not too late for that to happen. And I have to go because we are here from Monday and Wednesday from 6:30 to not supposed to be this long. And we will be back on Wednesday. And I'm going to be very curious to see what kind of comments you guys put in on this show. If we do get any comments, and what will have happened by then. But I do ask you, do some of us how many of you are doing what Elizabeth is doing, which is wishing that it would all go away, and how many of us are hoping that some strong person will emerge from the other side? Debbie said, hi, James and Beth. Great topic tonight. Thank you, Debbie. I'm so glad that you said that. I was afraid that I was going to alienate all my fans. But as usual, I'm not answering our questions. Oh, I see all kinds of hearts coming up. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. These are times when we need to be thinking. And thinking is not our habit, is it? We have been relying on things taking care of themselves, on institutions functioning, on mommy and daddy being there, making dinner every night. Well, it ain't like that anymore. And for a lot of us, it never was like that, was it? So don't forget that also on Thursday night, I play the piano for you, Dreams of Peace. It's very peaceful. So I look forward to seeing you again. Please like, love, comment, and share this show.
And when you make your comments, Beth will read them all and respond.
I certainly will. And maybe some of them will end up on our show on Wednesday. You never know. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye for now.